Hello everyone, and welcome to Sleep Triggers ASMR. You're about to enter a world where horror whispers gently in the dark. Where shadows tell stories, and the rain keeps you company. Tonight's tale will guide you through fear, softly wrapped in sound. Don't worry, you're safe here with me. Let the unease comfort you, and let each sound pull you deeper into rest. If you enjoy these immersive horror sleep experiences, please like, subscribe, and tap the so you'll never miss a night. I'll be here, waiting, every night, to tell you another story. Now, close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And let the story begin. At first, I just wanted to find a good story to write, something for my readers who haven't unfollowed me yet. Now, I'm not sure if I can ever leave this building. The first time I heard about Building 13 was late at night, in between writing sessions. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee. It was late, and the rain outside tapped gently on the window. My headphones were in, playing a deep nighttime podcast. The host's voice was low, almost mocking. Urban legends are becoming marketing scripts these days. Tonight, we're talking about the story of Building 13, also known as the Echo Building. When I heard those words, something hit me. I paused the podcast, opened my laptop, and typed in the keywords, Building 13, Chicago Lost Residents, the Echo Building. The results were oddly scarce. In this day and age, strange rumors, paranormal stories, they all go viral on TikTok. But this building, it was like someone had scrubbed it from the internet entirely. No photos, no exact address, only vague comments and hearsay, like the kind of urban legend where, those who know, don't speak, and those who don't, should never ask. Building 13 isn't empty, those who go in, never leave. Want to know how to spot them? Their phones still update their statuses, but it's all nonsense. My old roommate's sister lived there. The last time I heard from her, she said on the phone, "Can you hear it? He's copying the way I speak." I couldn't stop reading. I'm not into the paranormal. I'm not one for conspiracy theories. But I'm a freelance writer on the verge of getting fired. I need traffic. I need a viral story. Half believed, half curious, this urban legend seemed like just the kind of thing to blow up, especially on TikTok or YouTube. So the next day, I went to the Chicago City Archives. I spent the entire day sifting through property records until, in a 1978 city planning map, I found a blacked-out section marked, Residential Building Number 13, demolished in 1997. But in 2022, Google Street View still showed it. A gray, dilapidated apartment building, sitting on the edge of the Southwest District and the industrial area. Building 13. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I believed in video footage. I decided to go there in person. The weather was damp, and the streets of Chicago were a blur under the fog, the yellow streetlights reflecting off puddles in odd shapes. That part of town was long abandoned, most of the factories had shut down. The GPS guided me through a graffiti-covered old railway bridge, then stopped at a nondescript concrete structure. No address. No sign of any residence. Not even a trash can, mailbox, or security camera. But I knew this was Building 13. Because its windows were all shut, yet there were lights on, layer by layer, glowing faintly. Not the bright white of LED lights, but a soft yellow, like the tone of old VHS tapes. I didn't bring a camera, only my phone. But as I tried to take a photo, the camera couldn't focus, and strange lines interfered with the image, as if an old television screen was glitching. I tried to get closer, the door wasn't locked. It was just slightly ajar, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't go in. It wasn't the right time. Sometimes you can feel when a space doesn't want you there. It's not fear, it's a sense of pressure, of being watched. That door was breathing, waiting for me to step through. On the way home, I kept listening to the recording I made. But as I replayed it, I heard my own voice saying things I hadn't said. Things like, "Can you hear it? It's not me speaking. He's copying the way I speak." But I never said those words. That night, I couldn't sleep. I dreamt I was walking through an old building without an elevator, climbing floor after floor. Every door was open, with someone sitting behind it, watching me pass by. Nobody spoke. But I knew they all lived in Building 13. The stories started to connect. The pieces fit, but the picture that was forming, it wasn't a picture at all. It was a maze, with no way out. The next day, I returned to the neighborhood, the faint aftertaste of last night's unease lingering. My head felt heavy, as if it too had been absorbed by the building, like it had taken root inside my thoughts. I stood outside, staring up at the same gray concrete facade of Building 13. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick, a kind of humid chill that felt like it might swallow you whole. I had spent most of the night rereading the forum posts I found about the building. But each one seemed to raise more questions than answers. I lived there for a year. I don't know why I stayed so long. Every night, I heard footsteps outside my door. But no one was ever there. The sound is the worst part. It's not really a noise. More like something trying to communicate with you. I swear, I'd hear someone whispering my name, and then I'd get a text from my mom, as if she was calling me. But she wasn't. The building doesn't just trap people physically. It traps their lives. Every single person who went in, they didn't leave. At least not the same. They were never the same again. I felt the weight of the building bearing down on me, the urge to find the truth pulling me forward. As I stood at the entrance, I reached into my bag and pulled out the one thing that could give me answers, an old, unreliable audio recorder. The same type of tape recorder I had used back in high school for interviews. A crude tool, but it had the one feature I needed, the ability to record every noise, every whisper, without a filter. I pushed the door open, and it creaked, like the building was waking up from a long slumber. Inside, the air was musty, and the faint smell of mildew lingered in the corners. The lobby was quiet, unnervingly so. There were no signs of life, no bustling activity, no sounds of neighbors. Just silence. I knew better than to think I was alone. The building had been abandoned for years, yet it felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for someone to disturb its slumber. I walked cautiously down the hallway, every step echoing, the sound bouncing off the peeling walls. The doors on either side were mostly closed, some ajar just enough to peer inside. But I didn't dare open any. I had learned the hard way that some things are better left undisturbed. I passed several doors before stopping at one in particular, the third door from the end. There was something about it, something that drew me in. It was different from the others. The faintest hum of static was emanating from behind it. My heart raced. I had to know what was inside. I reached for the doorknob, and just before I touched it, I heard it, soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. A whisper. It was faint at first, just a syllable, but it grew clearer with each passing second. Help me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The voice was like a shadow, curling around me, but there was something off about it. I hadn't imagined it. There was someone, or something, on the other side of that door. I pulled out my recorder and held it close, the device clicking on. As the static crackled, the voice became clearer. Please, help. It wasn't a voice I recognized. But it sounded desperate, terrified. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't leave. I couldn't walk away without understanding what had happened here. I turned the knob slowly, pushing the door open just a crack. The room was dark, but I could make out the faintest glow coming from the corner. A flickering light, like a broken street lamp. I stepped inside, and the door shut behind me with a soft click. The room was small, nothing remarkable about it. A single bed, a dresser, some old furniture covered in dust. But it was the wall that drew my attention. The far wall, where the faint glow seemed to come from. I stepped closer, and as I did, the hum grew louder, until it was like a low-frequency vibration under my skin. The wall, it wasn't a wall at all. It was a screen. A screen that flickered like an old television set. The kind you see in horror movies, where a distorted image appears and then fades away, leaving only static. But this wasn't a movie. The screen showed something I wasn't prepared for. It was a video. A video of a man, no, a person, sitting on the floor of the very room I was in, staring blankly at the camera. His face was distorted, unrecognizable, as if the image itself was trying to twist and warp him. His eyes were wide, glassy, and unblinking, and there was something in the way his mouth moved, as if he were speaking, but the sound was distorted by static. I reached out to touch the screen, but before my fingers made contact, the image cut out, replaced by nothing but static. I jumped back, the recorder still in my hand, the device now emitting a low hum of its own. I looked at the screen again, but there was no sign of the man. only static. But the hum, it was still there, growing louder, pulsing in the air around me. "Get out!" The voice whispered, and this time, it came from the walls, from everywhere. It was everywhere. And then I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing down the hall outside. I wasn't alone. The building is trying to tell me something. I don't know if I can understand it. But I know I have to keep going. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, staring at the static on the screen. The sound of those footsteps echoed louder, closer, as if someone, or something, was coming for me. My breath caught in my throat, and the hairs on the back of my neck prickled with that cold sense of impending doom. The recorder in my hand was still humming, its static now like a chorus of whispers, adding to the terrifying soundscape. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know if I even wanted to leave. But I had to leave. The urge was overwhelming. I backed away slowly from the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps outside were getting nearer. They were deliberate, heavy. Someone, or something, was walking toward the room, just on the other side of the door. Without thinking, I rushed for the door and twisted the handle. It didn't budge. My pulse raced as I pulled harder, but the door was stuck. It was as though something was holding it shut from the outside, something unnatural. The footsteps grew louder. I was trapped. I frantically scanned the room, looking for another way out, but the only window was covered in layers of grime, blocking any light from outside. There was no other escape. And then, I heard it. A faint, unintelligible whisper from the far corner of the room. I turned toward it, and the temperature seemed to drop suddenly, making my breath visible in the air. There, in the corner, on the floor near the dresser, was a small piece of paper. It was old, yellowed, and folded in half. I rushed to it, desperate for something, anything that might explain what was happening. I unfolded it carefully, not sure what I expected to find. It was a set of numbers. Scratched out hastily, as if someone had written them in a hurry. 13-5-8-21-3. I stared at the numbers, trying to make sense of them. The handwriting was frantic, almost illegible. But something about it felt important. I knew it wasn't just a random sequence. The sound of the footsteps stopped just outside the door. A chilling silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the recorder. "Get out." The voice from earlier whispered again. It was closer now, not coming from the walls, but from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Nothing except the now flickering screen, casting strange shadows across the room. I couldn't take it anymore. My panic was suffocating. I had to get out. I had to leave. I tried the door again, pulling with all my strength, and this time, it gave way. The door creaked open, and I stumbled out into the hallway, my heart still racing. But the building wasn't done with me. I heard it before I saw it, the low hum, like a faraway engine, vibrating through the floor beneath me. I glanced around frantically. The hallway, which had seemed empty earlier, was now filled with shadows. They moved with unnatural fluidity, as if the very air itself was shifting. I ran. I couldn't hear the footsteps anymore, but I could feel them. They were right behind me, getting closer with every step I took. The hall seemed to stretch on forever, like I was running in place, no matter how fast I went. At the end of the hallway, there was another door. This one was different from the others. It was made of solid oak, with a simple brass handle. The air around it felt thick, like the pressure inside the building had doubled. I didn't stop to think. I threw open the door, expecting to find another empty room, another hallway to get lost in. But instead, I found something worse. A spiral staircase, descending into a darkness so thick it felt like it was alive. The hum of the building grew louder, almost deafening now, as though the walls themselves were alive, breathing. I stood there at the threshold, staring down the stairs, knowing that whatever was waiting at the bottom, whatever had been following me through the building, it was waiting for me to descend. But I couldn't stop myself. My feet moved of their own accord, as if the building had a will of its own, pulling me down into the darkness. The numbers from the paper, the sequence, were etched into my mind. 13-5-8-21-3. What did it mean? And why did it feel like I was supposed to understand it? The first step was cold, unnaturally cold, and as I descended further, I could feel the air grow heavier, the walls closing in around me. I don't know how far I went, 10 steps. 20. 30. I couldn't keep track anymore. Then, I heard it. A low, guttural sound, something between a growl and a whisper, echoing up from the depths of the stairs. You shouldn't have come here. The voice wasn't human. It was something else. Something ancient. I froze. And then I heard the unmistakable sound of something heavy shifting in the darkness, as if it were moving toward me. The deeper I go, the less I feel like myself. This place is alive. It is watching, waiting, feeding on the fear of anyone who dares to come too close. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen on the stairs, staring into the darkness that seemed to stretch forever below. The air was thick, heavy with a coldness that seeped into my bones and made my every movement sluggish, as though the very atmosphere was holding me back. The sound from below, low, guttural, and almost like a growl, lingered in the air, vibrating through the walls. It wasn't just a noise. It was a presence. Something was down there, waiting for me. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to stop. Something inside me, a primal instinct perhaps, was pushing me forward. I had to know. I had to understand. I took the next step down the stairs, my foot meeting the cold stone with a sharp echo that reverberated through the silence. The hum of the building grew louder again, pressing in on me from all sides. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was like the building itself was alive, breathing, reacting to my every move. Step after step, I descended into the darkness, each breath growing heavier, each heartbeat louder in my ears. The chill in the air seemed to become more suffocating as I went deeper. At some point, I realized I had lost track of time. The staircase spiraled, and every time I thought I had reached the bottom, it stretched further into the abyss. The faint glow from above, the dim light I had left behind, was nothing but a distant memory now. There was only darkness, and the weight of the building pressing down on me. Then, finally, I reached the bottom. It wasn't what I expected. Instead of a floor, I stepped onto something soft, almost like a damp carpet. But there was no carpet. Only blackness. And the smell. It was a musty, decaying scent, like something had been left to rot in the damp for decades. The air tasted sour, heavy, thick with decay. I stood still for a moment, adjusting to the complete lack of light. My phone was useless, no signal, no flashlight. The recorder in my hand was the only thing left working, and it hummed with a constant buzz, static filling the silence. Suddenly, a low voice broke the quiet. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was unmistakable, soft, eerie, but unmistakably human. It came from the shadows, just beyond the reach of my hearing. I strained my eyes, trying to make out any shape, any figure, but there was nothing. Just darkness. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. Something was wrong. I couldn't speak, couldn't make a sound, as though the very air around me was muting my voice. "You shouldn't have come," the voice repeated, this time louder, sharper. And then, just as quickly, the voice was gone, replaced by an eerie silence that felt thicker than the darkness itself. I took a cautious step forward, my hand outstretched, but before I could move any further, I felt something brush against my arm. A cold hand. I spun around, but there was nothing. Nothing but the cold air, the oppressive weight of the darkness, and the overwhelming hum of the building's pulse. What is this place? The question echoed in my mind, louder than my heartbeat. This wasn't just a building, it was something else. Something alive. Something old. The whispers, the voices, the presence, it was all coming from here, from the very heart of the structure. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room, just barely visible in the thick darkness, was a figure. A person. Standing motionless, like a shadow cast by the building itself. I froze, staring at the figure. My mind screamed for me to turn back, to run, to escape. But my legs wouldn't move. The figure didn't move either. It just stood there, facing the wall, as though it were waiting for something. I didn't understand. Who was that? The static on my recorder intensified, growing louder, until it was deafening. I pulled the device closer to my ear, trying to focus on it. There was something in the static. Something hidden beneath the noise. A pattern. A sequence. The numbers. The sequence from the paper. 13-5-8-21-3. It was repeating in the static, a whisper of numbers, flowing like a chant. Suddenly, the figure in the shadows twitched. It wasn't a natural movement. It was jerky, mechanical, like a puppet with its strings tangled. Slowly, it turned its head toward me. Its eyes were hollow, dark voids that swallowed the light, and its mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a horrific, silent scream. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands shook as I held the recorder tighter. I had to get out of here. I had to leave. The voice was louder now, stronger, resonating from the walls around me. The room seemed to close in, the darkness thickening until it felt like it was suffocating me. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran. I don't know how long I ran or how many twists and turns I took in that maze of darkness. I felt like I was chasing something, or being chased, but I couldn't stop. The walls seemed to shift with every step, making the path seem longer, more labyrinthine. And then, finally, there was light. It was dim at first, barely visible, but it grew brighter the closer I got. A door. A way out. I shoved it open, and the light from the outside flooded in, washing away the darkness. I didn't stop running until I was back on the street, breathing in the cool night air like it was my last breath. I stood there, panting, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. The building. Building 13. I was free, but I could still feel its presence, its weight on my chest, like it was following me. And the numbers. I knew the truth wasn't in the building. It was in the pattern. The numbers. The code. I would go back. I had to. I used to think paranoia was just fear with no proof. But now I understand, it's instinct. And it's always watching, even when you think you're safe. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I made it back to my apartment, locked the door, turned on every light, pulled the curtains shut, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had brought something back with me. Like the building had branded me, marked me as its own. The numbers haunted me. 13-5-8-21-3. They played over and over in my head like a skipping record. I saw them in the steam on my bathroom mirror. Heard them whispering in the hum of my fridge. Dreamed them behind my closed eyes when I tried to rest. It was no longer about curiosity. Now it felt like survival. I pulled my laptop onto the kitchen table and typed the sequence into every search bar I could find. Nothing made sense. Then I had a thought. What if it wasn't a code in numbers? What if it was letters? I opened a text editor and tried a simple A equals 1 cipher. 13 equals M. 5 equals E. 8 equals H. 21 equals U. 3 equals C. Mihawk. It made no sense. At least, not yet. But something gnawed at me. I reversed the sequence. 3-21-8-5-13. That gave me 3 equals C. 21 equals U. 8 equals H. 5 equals E. 13 equals M. Qm. Still gibberish. Then I saw it, on the side of my coffee mug. Something small, nearly rubbed off after years of use, a faint logo from my old university. A place I hadn't thought about in years. And suddenly it clicked. Mihuk wasn't a random word. It was an acronym. Metropolitan Eastern Historical Urban Catalog. It was a digital archive, something only old architecture students or obsessive local historians would even know existed. A site so buried on the internet, you had to know what you were looking for to find it. I logged in using my ancient student credentials. Surprisingly, the site still existed. Dated, glitchy, but intact. I searched, Building 13. Nothing. I searched the address. One result. Former Parcel 13B, Underground Civil Shelter Draft. The entry was locked. Redacted. Except for one thing, a digital blueprint. Not of the building above, but what lay beneath it. Tunnels, chambers. A spiral staircase, just like the one I descended. There was even a label, Maintenance Access, Sublevel 4, Cavity B. But one word made my stomach turn. Patient Transfer Corridor. This wasn't an apartment complex. Or, at least, it hadn't always been one. I leaned back, staring at the screen, heart racing. Was Building 13 built on top of an old hospital? A bunker? A prison? Then something new appeared. A message. On my screen. You're not supposed to be here. It wasn't part of the website. It wasn't from my browser. It just appeared. White text, black box. No cursor. No escape key. I slammed the lid shut. My ears were ringing. My head buzzed. Then I realized, I was hearing the static again. Not from the recorder this time. From the radio. My apartment radio, never turned on, no batteries, was humming. Same as in Building 13. And behind the static, I heard a voice. Level 4, return. Level 4. My mouth went dry. The code. The message. The voice. It wasn't just drawing me in. It was calling me back. I turned to the window. And saw it. Across the street, at the edge of the skyline, Building 13 was lit up. Every light on. All 13 floors, blazing like a beacon. Except, there were only 12 floors on the outside. Always had been. They say evil doesn't live in buildings. That it's people who make places haunted. But what if a place can learn? What if it remembers? I hadn't left my apartment in nearly 2 days. The curtains stayed drawn, and every reflective surface was covered, mirrors, TV screens, even the microwave door. Ever since I saw that building lit up, all 13 floors, something inside me had shifted. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I packed only what I needed: the recorder, a flashlight with new batteries, a notebook, and 3 granola bars. I told no one. It wasn't just because I didn't want to sound insane, it was because I didn't trust anyone not to try to stop me. I waited until 2:13 a.m. Because of course it was always 13. The streets were empty, fog rolling low across the sidewalks like something out of a noir film. Building 13 loomed ahead, silent, unwelcoming, yet expectant. It was like it knew I was coming back. I stood across the street and stared up at it. 13 rows of windows now. 13 levels of perfect symmetry. But no movement inside. No flickers of life. Just that unnatural stillness. I crossed over. There was no doorman. The lobby lights flickered, just like last time. But when I stepped inside, everything had changed. The elevator was working. That wasn't possible. Last time, it was a rusted husk of machinery, dead and cold. Now, the doors were open, waiting. And on the panel, a glowing button. 13. I stepped in. My heart pounded. The doors closed. I didn't even touch the button, it pressed itself. The elevator began to rise. It shouldn't have taken so long. Minutes passed, but I felt no shift in gravity, no mechanical shudder. Just the sound of smooth movement, the same distant humming I'd heard underground. Then the elevator stopped. The doors opened. And I was not on a normal floor. This wasn't part of any modern building. The walls were brick, lined with thick pipes dripping condensation. The air smelled of mildew, copper, and something faintly chemical. There was a hallway ahead. No windows. Just a single flickering bulb overhead and a plaque on the wall. Room 13. It was the only door. Unmarked, metallic, and wet to the touch, as though the walls were sweating. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. I opened it. The room was massive. Bigger than it should have been. Cathedral-high ceilings, black tile floors, and walls lined with old CRT monitors, all showing live feeds of rooms I didn't recognize. Apartments. Bedrooms. Bathrooms. Some were empty. Some were not. I saw a man pacing in circles, talking to himself. A woman sitting perfectly still, eyes wide, bleeding from the ears. A child screaming silently, mouth open, no sound. I stumbled back. And then, one of the screens changed. It showed me. In real time. Standing in room 13, looking at the monitors. I waved my hand. My reflection waved back. And behind me, a figure. I turned. Nothing. But I had seen it, a silhouette, tall, hunched, wearing what looked like a caretaker's uniform, except the face was all wrong. Too long. Too wide. As if someone had stretched skin over a mannequin frame. I bolted. Down the hall. Into the elevator. Back through the lobby. But the lobby was gone. In its place was a long corridor of rusted hospital beds, overturned gurneys, blood-stained tiles. Somewhere deep in the hallway, a bell rang. 3 times. Then silence. And in that silence, I heard something that turned my blood to ice. The recorder in my pocket clicked on by itself. And my voice, my own voice, spoke from it. You belong to the building now. Sometimes you don't notice the world is broken until it shows you what whole used to feel like. I don't remember leaving the building. 1 second I was standing in that impossible corridor of hospital beds, and the next I was back on the sidewalk, kneeling, coughing, my hands scraped raw like I'd crawled through gravel. The sky was brighter, dawn, maybe. But something was off. Everything felt delayed. Cars passed with no sound. People walked by without acknowledging me, their faces blank, almost blurred at the edges, like compressed video. Even the wind felt fake, mechanical. I stumbled home, turned on the faucet to wash the blood off my hands. No water came. Only static. Actual, crackling static, pouring out of the tap in a thin, hissing stream like liquid electricity. I yanked my hand back. A spark leapt to my fingertips. In the silence that followed, I heard it again, that same voice, distant, distorted. Room 13 must remain occupied. I tried to call someone. No service. I checked the clock. 13:13. No. That wasn't real. My watch was analog. I looked down. It, too, read 13:13. My phone vibrated. One new message. No number. Just text. You broke containment. Return before memory collapses. My vision blurred. I dropped the phone. When I looked back down, the message was gone. My phone was off. Battery drained to 0%. I needed answers. I remembered the blueprint, the one I saw on the Mihawk archive. There had been a library mentioned at the bottom of the page, Carroll Reference Archive, subfloor B. A real place, I was almost sure. I found it, buried beneath the old municipal courthouse on 10th Street. A damp, forgotten basement of yellowed files and mismatched cabinets. A clerk sat at the front desk, wearing oversized glasses and chewing slowly on something gray and tasteless. I asked her about Building 13. She didn't even blink. Just handed me a manila folder and said, "You can't take it with you. You can only read it here." I opened it. Parcel 13B, timeline. 1952, construction halted after 4 workers go missing. 1953, officially reclassified as Containment Sector C. 1961, psychiatric research facility approved, but never publicly disclosed. 1977, reports of hallucinogenic urban drift linked to proximity of building. 1984, structure burns from the inside, yet exterior untouched. 1991, reopened as subsidized housing for city employees. No public records. Attached was a grainy black and white photo of a door. Metal. Unmarked. Wet to the touch. Room 13. I turned to ask the clerk more. She was gone. No one at the desk. No door behind it. Just a mirror. My own reflection stared back, but it wasn't me. It was me, but as I had looked hours earlier, blood on my cheek, dirt on my shirt. And behind that version of me, the caretaker again. Still. Watching. I blinked. The mirror went black. When I turned around, the library wasn't a library anymore. It was a hallway. 13 doors. All slightly open. And every one of them whispering the same thing, in a dozen voices overlapping like warped cassette tape. Welcome back to the program. Cities are built on the bones of the forgotten. Some are dead. Some were just misplaced. The hallway didn't end. Each door whispered something different as I passed, laughter, sobs, fragments of old radio shows that hadn't aired in decades. But one voice kept repeating a phrase over and over, barely audible under the static. I didn't sign the lease. I didn't sign the lease. I opened the first door on the left. It was a replica of a 1970s apartment. Shag carpet, amber lighting, rotary phone. On the couch sat a man, middle-aged, dressed in clothes 2 generations out of style. He was still. Breathing. But his eyes were wide open, fixed on the television. The TV was playing static. Except it wasn't just noise. I leaned closer. Through the distortion, I could make out a video feed of another room. Another person. Another era. A woman sat in a 1940s kitchen, stirring a bowl that never seemed to empty. On the shelf above her, I saw something that made my skin crawl. A framed photo. It was of me. Smiling. Blank-eyed. Wearing clothes I had never owned. I backed out of the room. Door 2, a child's bedroom. Toys from the 80s. Wallpaper faded with time. A boy sat on the floor, humming to himself, eyes glassy, mouthing something I couldn't hear. I leaned in. He was saying the numbers. 13-5-8-21-3. Over and over. Suddenly, he stopped. Looked right at me. And whispered. "You're next." The doors became harder to open after that. Not physically, emotionally. Each one led to an era, a life frozen in time. A resident still inside. Stuck. Remembering the life they had before room 13 consumed them. Some wept. Some screamed. Some stared into corners like something unseen was whispering instructions. But the last door at the end of the hallway was different. Heavily rusted. Bolted from the outside. There was a number scratched into the steel. 000. No lock. No knob. Just a keyhole. And in my pocket, I suddenly felt something cold. I reached in. The recorder was gone. In its place, a key I'd never seen before. I slid it in. Turned. The door groaned open. Inside was nothing. Just a white room. Blank walls. No light source, yet everything was visible. In the center, a chair. Facing away. And in the chair, someone sitting perfectly still. I stepped closer. The figure wore my clothes. Same jacket. Same shoes. Same scrape on the knuckles. The same exact moment of me. It was me. But its face was missing. Not bloody. Not deformed. Just blank. Smooth. Like a wax sculpture before detail is added. Then, it spoke, without a mouth. You left, but you didn't leave. You remember, but not enough. You are the echo. The building remembers its tenants. I stumbled back. The walls began to melt. The ceiling dripped static. My head throbbed with overlapping voices. Containment broken. Reintegration required. Please return to room 13. And then, everything snapped black. I woke up on my bathroom floor. Back in my apartment. Daylight outside. Water running. I was holding the recorder. It was playing the last thing I heard before blacking out. You left, but you didn't leave. And over the sound of my own breath, I heard footsteps. Inside my apartment. Coming from the hallway. Slow. Heavy. Like someone dragging their feet. If you want to erase someone, start by erasing their context. Redacted memo, Mihuk Internal Communication, 1993. 3 days passed. Or maybe more. Time was soft. Colors slightly wrong. The shadows in my apartment no longer aligned with the light sources. I stopped trusting clocks. I kept the recorder near me at all times. It played things I hadn't recorded. Sometimes, it played voices I knew were dead. On the fourth morning, someone knocked at my door. Not pounded, knocked, politely. 3 times. I opened it slowly. A woman stood in the hallway, holding a leather satchel. Early 30s. Wore a windbreaker with CCRA stitched into the shoulder. Sorry to bother you, she said, her eyes scanning the room behind me. I'm with the Carroll City Records Authority. We're conducting an investigation into a former tenant. She handed me a name, Derek Holland. That was me. My real name. I'm right here, I said, throat dry. She tilted her head. No, you're not. Derek Holland was reported missing 6 days ago. You don't match the DMV record. And your lease was signed in 1991, by hand. She pulled out a cassette tape. Old. Labeled. Mihawk Archive, 13B, entry attempt 27. Do you have a player? She asked. I didn't. Not for cassettes. But the moment she stepped into the apartment, the recorder on my table clicked. Its shape shifted, gears reconfiguring inside. The top slid open with a hiss. A tape deck. She blinked. That's not possible. We slid in the tape. Pressed play. The static cleared almost immediately. Then, a deep male voice, tired, breaking. This is Dr. Renner. Attempting to document the effects of spatial recursion within containment structure 13B. Subject has entered room 13 for the 7th time. Time dilation confirmed. Recording may not persist across timelines. There was a pause. Then another voice. Familiar. It was me. Younger. Panicked. It's not a room. It's a mirror. It plays your memories back out of order. It watches which ones scare you the most, then rewrites them. Dr. Renner again. Test concluded. Subject showed rapid personality fragmentation. Prescribing cognitive wipe and reinsertion protocol. Uploading into reurbanization stream. The tape ended. The woman stared at me. Do you know what that means? I nodded. No, I said. But I think. I've lived through it. She pulled a second tape from her bag. This one labeled. Incomplete reintegration, audio only. But she didn't put it in the recorder. She looked at me and whispered. You're not supposed to exist outside that room. Before I could ask what she meant, she left. Quiet. Fast. Disappearing into the stairwell like she'd never been there. That night, I played the second tape. There was only one sound on it. The voice of a child, singing slowly, like a lullaby distorted through distance and dust. 13 knocks, 13 names. One by one they end the same. 13 rooms, 13 dreams. All forgotten, none redeemed. And under the song, faintly, breathing. My own. From inside the recorder. Suddenly, I understood. Room 13 isn't a place. It's a trapdoor in the mind. A pocket in urban reality where identity can be stored, edited, looped, or deleted. I was part of a study that never ended. And the world outside, it wasn't outside anymore. It was just another corridor. Most missing persons aren't missing. They've just been replaced by better versions that play along. Carroll City District Memo, sealed file 33EA. The city was wrong. Not in the way it looked, but in how it behaved. Traffic lights blinked in loops that didn't make sense. Buses arrived without passengers. And the people, they moved like background actors, repeating gestures, nods, smiles. Small talk that never ended. I walked for hours. Looking for her, the woman with the windbreaker, the one who brought me the tapes. No one remembered seeing her. I stopped at a public archive terminal downtown, one of the old-style kiosks meant for genealogical and property research. I typed in her ID code from the badge she'd shown. CCRA investigator, Leona Hartley. The result loaded after a long delay. Status, deceased. Date of death, August 13, 2015. Cause, classified, redacted. I checked again. Photo attached. My fingers trembled. It was her. Exactly as she appeared 3 nights ago. Not aged. Not decayed. Alive. I printed the record. The machine jammed halfway through. When I tried to pull the page free, a small folded document dropped from behind the panel. Handwritten. Yellowed. Edges burned. It read, "If you see yourself in a room that remembers you, leave the building. Not the floor. Not the hall. The building." And scribbled below, as if added later in a different hand. Leona tried. So did 26 others. They never left the blueprint. I returned home and locked every door. Even then, I could feel something was off. The air was warmer, but the thermostat read 66 degrees Fahrenheit. My fridge hummed at a different pitch. My reflection in the hallway mirror lagged half a second behind. And then came the voice. From inside the recorder again. But this time, it wasn't my voice. It was hers. "Leona. You're not where you think you are, Derek. The city isn't real. You're in a broadcast of the city. A contained urban copy. A loop model. They took a full imprint of Carol in 1997. Every building, every breath, every tenant. Your apartment is a memory container designed for neural flexibility tests. Room 13 was the entry point. But it's not the cage. The cage is everything else." Then came static. Harsh. Metallic. And a new phrase, in a synthetic voice I hadn't heard before. Subject reconnection breach. Containment asset, aware. Initiate recursive cleanup. A loud bang rang through my ceiling. Dust fell from the fixtures. I looked up, and saw the sprinkler head was turning. But no water came out. Just red smoke. Thick. Sweet-smelling. Chemical. I tried to run. Made it to the stairwell. But as I pushed the door open, it led to another hallway. Familiar. Carpeted. With a single door at the end. Brass handle. Black plaque. 13. I scream. I clawed the walls. I hit the lights and watched the shadows twitch independently of me. But I couldn't stop walking. Toward the door. Toward the room that knew my name before I did. And as my fingers brushed the handle, the recorder in my pocket clicked again. This time, no voices. Just breathing. And then a whisper. We're ready to overwrite you now. Memories aren't stored like files. They're re-rendered each time you access them, which makes them editable. Dr. Howard Renner, Mihut Cognitive Lab Memo 12C. I thought I blacked out. But I didn't. Because I woke up standing. Standing in the exact same hallway. Same lights. Same smell. Same door marked 13. Only now, it was open. I stepped inside. And the world shifted again. The inside of room 13 wasn't a room anymore. It was a corridor, an endless loop of apartments, each identical to mine. A Mobius hallway, curving in ways that defied architecture. I passed my kitchen 3 times. I saw the couch where I slept from an angle that shouldn't exist. And then, I saw myself. Sitting on the floor. Headphones on. Eyes blank. Watching the hallway I was now walking through. He didn't move. I tried to speak, but the words felt glued to my throat. Instead, a loudspeaker crackled overhead. Derek Holland. Iteration 14. Subject has re-entered simulation corridor, stability rating, 7.3. Observe and log deviation behavior. That voice. Cold. Measured. Not human. I kept walking, until the hallway finally glitched, the floor beneath me snapping from carpet to cold concrete in a single frame. The walls peeled away, like set pieces. I was now standing in what looked like a control chamber, dark glass panels, cassette stacks, CRT monitors. Each monitor showed a different version of me, in different apartments, at different moments. Some versions were crying. Some were staring at static TVs. Some were just gone. Deleted. Then I heard it again. The breathing. Right behind me. I turned. A silhouette stood in the shadows, watching. Not moving. Featureless, but tall. Draped in a black plastic poncho, like someone wearing a body bag. It raised its arm and pointed to a panel behind me. File integrity, Derek Holland, compromised. Merge required. Y/N. Then, it vanished. I approached the console. The buttons were mechanical, smeared with fingerprints. My own. A reel-to-reel machine was slowly turning. I could see my childhood playing out on the screens, my 4th birthday, my first Halloween costume, the last argument with my mother. All real. All edited. Every few seconds, text blinked beneath the video feed. Source, Carroll City Construct, copy 7. And beneath that, authenticity score, 72%. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just inside room 13 anymore. I was inside the Carroll Construct, a full replica of the city, built not to store memories, but to train them, refine them, scrub them clean. And I was an error in that system. A door hissed open behind me. Footsteps. Soft. Measured. Leona walked in. But her face, her eyes, were flat now. Not dead. Just empty, like a mask-playing human. She placed a tape in my hand. Your original self opted out. This version was meant to replace you. But something got corrupted. You're free to go, she said. But first, choose which you gets to leave. She nodded to a second panel. 2 options glowed red. Original Derek, heavily fragmented. Current Derek, system adjusted. You can only pick one. The other will be archived. I stared at the screen. Then at the tape. It was labeled in shaky handwriting. Me, before the room. No date. No time code. Just that. The tape was warm. Still spinning. Every time you remember something, your brain rewrites it slightly. Now imagine someone else is holding the pen. Excerpt from the Neuroforgery Manifesto, banned document recovered from Vault Delta Zeta. I chose me. Or, the one I remembered being. I pressed the button labeled Original Derek, and the room responded like a living thing. The air thinned. The lights dimmed. Leona didn't move. She simply watched me, with that same hollow patience. The way a nurse might watch a dying man sign his own DNR. A hiss came from the wall. The far panel slid open, revealing a metal slab, half hospital bed, half surgical table, flanked by flickering cathode tubes. The walls were now pulsing with slow red lights. A robotic voice whispered from overhead. Transfer initiating. Integrity risk, high. Warning, consciousness may fragment. Do not resist. I lay down. And then, it began. It wasn't pain. Not exactly. It was removal. The sensation of thoughts being unhooked from language. Like someone pulling film from a reel, one frame at a time. I saw flashes. My father telling me not to go near the basement after dark. My high school locker, where a note once appeared, "You don't belong here." My first night in room 13. My first night in room 13. Wait. There were 2. I tried to open my mouth, but I had no body anymore, only perspective. Memories spilled like blood. Voices overlapped. You've been here before. No, he was iteration 9. You're 14. But I remember being 9. That's because the system wrote you that way. Suddenly, I was in a hallway again. But not the same one. This was older. Dust-covered. Wood paneling. Carpet faded with time. A glowing green sign marked exit, but it flickered between languages. Exit. Salida. Phnom. F. I walked toward it. The floor under me rippled like water. And then, I fell. Straight down. I landed in a dark, metallic chamber. Silence. Then, a tape slid into a nearby player and clicked. This is Dr. Renner. If you're hearing this, you've survived your first merge attempt. That's rare. You should be proud, or horrified. You're inside the transfer room. It was built in 2003 as part of Project Deep Mirror. Purpose: test the elasticity of identity across false city constructs. In short, how many times can we rewrite a person before they notice? I reached out and hit eject. Another tape waited on the shelf, covered in dust. Its label read, Iteration 1, Self-Termination Recording. I didn't want to listen. But I had to. The tape played. I heard my voice. Older. Tired. Breaking. If anyone finds this, don't choose the original. That part of me was broken long before the room. The newer versions, they survive longer. They don't remember the screams and the static. The copies have cleaner minds. Fewer cracks. But if you chose the old me, then I guess you wanted to remember. So here it is. They told us Carol was evacuated after the refinery collapse. That was a lie. Carol never existed. It was a test-bed city, grown in sections like coral, fed by signal loops and neural dampeners. We were never born. We were written. And now, so are you. The tape clicked off. Behind me, the chamber doors opened. A stairwell. Concrete. Real. Maybe. I walked toward it, dizzy, heart pounding. As I climbed, the lights flickered. For a split second, I saw faces in the walls, people I almost recognized. Faces from dreams, or memories not mine. One of them whispered, "Don't go back up. You'll only find another version of the same lie." But I kept going. Because what else was left? At the top, a door. Plastic push bar. A red sign that said, Simulation exit, staff only. And beneath it, scratched by fingernail or key, nothing beyond this is real either. I hesitated. Then I pushed the door open. The first lie they sell you is freedom. The second is that you chose it. Graffiti found near the outer perimeter of the Carol construct. When I opened the door, I expected light. What I got was silence. Not peace. Not calm. Silence, like sound had been surgically removed. I stepped into a city that looked like Carol. Same skyline. Same humid sky. Same cracks in the sidewalk. But something was wrong. Too still. Too clean. Too exact. A plastic simulation of dirt. Light without warmth. Breeze without movement. It felt like standing in the memory of a city, not the city itself. The street signs were blank. The storefronts all had names, but no interiors. Cars moved, but no one drove them. People walked the sidewalks, but they didn't blink. They weren't people. They were stand-ins. One of them turned to face me. No face. Just smooth, pale skin stretched across where features should be. It opened its mouth, and I heard my own voice. You shouldn't have left. I ran. Down avenues that curved back into themselves. Past newsstands that sold blank newspapers. Into alleys that shimmered like broken mirrors. Finally, I found it. A rusted service door behind an abandoned diner. Real dust. Real rust. Real age. I pushed it open. Inside, darkness. And a voice. Close it behind you. They'll follow if it stays open too long. I obeyed. And then I saw him. The man was in his 40s, unshaven, wearing a parka meant for a colder world. His eyes were bloodshot but sharp, like someone who'd stared at a lie long enough to see through it. He offered me a metal flask. Water. Real water. Name's Madsen. I escaped 3 years ago. Or at least, I think I did. You're from the apartment simulation, right? Room 13. I nodded. He smiled, grimly. Everyone starts there. That room is the seed. We sat in silence for a while. The space we were in felt real. Old concrete. Exposed pipes. Fluorescent lights buzzing slightly off rhythm. Madsen unrolled a map. Not paper. Not digital. Skin. Tanned human skin, etched with city blocks. He pointed to a jagged red line circling most of the map. This is the boundary. Beyond here, the simulation loses cohesion. You've probably noticed the static, visual or emotional. That's memory bleed. Your mind trying to rewrite too fast. They built Carroll as a containment city. Not for people, but for identities. Every citizen here is a composite. A blend of behavioral patterns harvested from thousands of profiles. We're not people. We're models. I stared at the map. Every location I'd been was marked with a number. No names. Just codes. R13, my room. SD2, simulation corridor. TB1, transfer bed. X0. I pointed to the last one. What's X0? Madsen looked up sharply. That's the origin point. The Black Seed. The first construct they made, long before Carroll. No one comes back from there the same. If they come back at all. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Outside the metal door, I heard movement. Soft. Slipping. Wet. Madsen cursed and stood up. They found you fast. He handed me something, a flash drive. Old. Heavy. If you want answers, go to the library vault in Sector 6. Plug this in. It'll show you who you were, and what they made you into. But be careful. Every time you learn something new, they'll send cleaners to rewrite it. The door behind us shook. Something slammed into it. Hard. Twice. 3 times. And then, silence again. Madsen looked at me. You've got maybe 10 minutes before this place dissolves. After that, there's no coming back. He paused. You still want the truth? I didn't answer with words. I took the drive, stood, and opened the service hatch on the other side of the room. As I climbed through it into the dark, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure if Madsen had ever been real, or if he was just another simulation, giving me exactly what I wanted to hear. Some doors weren't meant to open. Others don't close once they do. Handwritten warning on the walls of Sector 5's drainage tunnels. The tunnel spit me out into a service corridor beneath what once looked like a train station. Everything above ground had changed. The sky was red. Not a painter's red. Not the hue of dusk. Error code red. As if the rendering system had glitched, painting the atmosphere in corrupted pixels. Worse, the air itself was starting to hum. Like a chorus of flies trapped behind my eyes. I ran. Street names flickered like faulty code. Buildings warbled as if underwater. I passed a row of mannequins frozen mid-step, some dressed, some not. One of them turned its head toward me as I passed, eyelids blinking sideways. Somewhere above, an intercom cracked to life. Cleaning in progress. Identity breach detected in Zone Delta 4. Subject model, Derek. Directive, reconstruct. I ducked into an alley. Behind a rotting dumpster, a sewer hatch. I pried it open and climbed down. The tunnels were worse. Wet walls. Mold breathing in and out. Graffiti written in mirror text. You aren't the first Derek. They watch through memory. Don't bleed your name. I crawled for what felt like hours. Until the pipe curved upward. Until I saw it. Sector 6 Library. Or what was left of it. A concrete husk in a glass city. Vines of electric wire strangling the facade. An ancient security bot frozen mid-step at the entrance, its chest plate caved in. Inside was cold. Wrong kind of cold. The kind that lives in data centers and dead hospitals. I moved fast. My footsteps echoed like broken time signatures. Hallways bent in impossible angles. Bookcases groaned as I passed. Then I heard it. Heavy, clicking footsteps. Cleaners. Not people. Not robots. Hybrids. Glass skin. Organ pipe lungs. Faces like smudged IDs. One of them whispered as it walked. False selves must be shredded. I ducked behind a shelf. Held my breath. The cleaner stopped just feet away. Its face turned, a mirror. In it, I saw dozens of me. Laughing. Screaming. Sleeping. Crying. Versions that never existed. Or had. Or would. Then it moved on. I bolted the other way. Down a stairwell. Basement level. A door labeled. Restricted, deep archive staff only. I inserted the flash drive into the old panel. A hiss. A green light. The door opened. And behind it, silence. But not emptiness. A single terminal waited at the end of the room. CRT screen. Green text. A single prompt blinking. Load memory model. Y/N. I hit Y. The screen went black. Then. Video. Me. But younger. Maybe 16. Sitting in a room with white walls. Speaking to someone off camera. I just want to wake up. The voice replied. Derek, you already have. This is the real world. Carol is just where we process you. You're a reformation subject. A memory rehab experiment. We wiped the event. The whole incident. You asked us to. We gave you a better story. A quieter one. I started shaking. The screen kept playing. Clips now. My mother's face, stitched wrong. A house that never existed burning in reverse. Me, holding something sharp. Covered in blood. Laughing. The final clip. A handprint on a glass wall. My hand. Writing something backwards. I leaned closer. The phrase. You put yourself here. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I turned. 3 cleaners stood there. But they didn't move. They stared. Then, one stepped forward, and dropped something on the floor. Another flash drive. Its label read. Derek. Final build. And just like that, they vanished. No noise. No transition. Just gone. The screen blinked again. Would you like to restore full memory continuity? Warning, risk of total ego collapse. Y/N. My finger hovered over the key. What if the truth broke me? What if that was the point? What if this entire simulation was a therapy program gone wrong? Or worse, working exactly as intended? I pressed Y. The screen went black. And something opened behind my eyes. The mind doesn't break. It folds. Over and over. Until the shape no longer resembles the truth. Testimony recovered from Beta Subject 04, Carroll Reformation Project. The moment I pressed Y, I fell. But not down. I fell inward. Fell through colorless thoughts and wireframe memories. Through warm static and the taste of old rain. I wasn't in the library anymore. I was in myself. First memory. A hallway. White. Too white. I was a teenager again. Dressed in a paper gown. Walking barefoot on freezing tile. On either side, mirrored walls. But the reflection didn't match me. It lagged. It smiled when I didn't. It blinked twice when I blinked once. One of them mouthed something. You started this. Flash. Another memory. I'm older. Standing in a boardroom, facing a wall of black glass. A logo glows in blue. Calyx Corp. / Memory Integrity Division. I'm pitching something. A simulation. Not for entertainment. Not even for punishment. For containment. Criminal rehabilitation through synthetic guilt. Let them live the weight of what they did. Until they forget they ever did it. They applauded. I smiled. Flash. Another. A room. A woman screaming. Blood on the floor. My hands shaking. A child hiding in the corner. Her face was blurred. Like the system had redacted it. Even in memory. I screamed. And the world fractured. I woke up in a version of my childhood bedroom. But the posters on the wall bled text. One said, "You designed the loop, Derek. You chose to erase the truth." Another said, "The simulation didn't trap you. It obeyed you." I got out of bed. There was a mirror. This time, the reflection didn't lag. It wasn't me either. It was someone older. Sick. Tired. Wearing the same expression I had when I first arrived in apartment 6B. He said, "Welcome back. Phase 3 begins now." The room dissolved. Now I was in the car crash. I remembered now. It wasn't an accident. I swerved, on purpose. There were 3 people in the car with me. 2 survived. 1 didn't. The system told me I was grieving. But I wasn't. I was running. Running from what I'd done. From what I'd planned. From what I helped build. The final memory hit like a fire alarm. A red room. I was strapped to a chair. Facing a panel of observers. All wearing masks. All speaking in my voice. Do you accept deletion of the original narrative? Do you surrender authorship of your identity? Do you wish to be punished in peace? I said yes. I asked for Carol. I asked for the loop. When I woke again, I was on the library floor. The screen was dead. The flash drives were gone. My hands were bleeding, but there were no wounds. And then I saw it. Burned into the concrete wall, behind the terminal. A single line of text. Phase 3, Reintroduction to False Freedom. I wasn't free. I wasn't even real anymore. I was a program trying to forget it was once a man. And now, I remember. At some point, the punishment forgets its purpose. It becomes a place. A city. A system. A god. Unattributed log, recovered from an unsecured Calyx Corp node. I stepped out of the library and the world was wrong. Not broken. Not destroyed. Just corrupted. Skyline pulsing like slow static. Shadows twitching at a few frames per second. Storefronts repeating themselves, same coffee shop, 5 times in a row, down the block. And everyone. They smiled too long. They blinked too slowly. Like actors still waiting for cue lines that never came. A woman bumped into me. She looked human. Until she glitched mid-breath. Flicker. Her eyes rotated completely around. Her mouth opened too wide, like a puppet with an invisible hand. She whispered, "You're the crash point." Then kept walking. Like nothing happened. I ran. Not sure where to go. Just away. But the streets wouldn't let me. Every alley turned into a hallway. Every corner led back to the same bus stop. An ad there flickered between. "Carol, your quiet place." And "You are safe. You are nothing." The bus never came. I waited anyway. Eventually, someone sat beside me. A boy. Couldn't be more than 8. He looked up at me and said, "You picked the long sentence, huh?" I stared at him. He was chewing gum. "They offered you 5 years of memory wipe. Or a lifetime in dream state guilt loop. You chose the second one. They said you insisted on it." He smiled. "I'm your conscience. Or maybe I'm a bug. Hard to tell these days." He handed me a note. On it, written in my handwriting, "If the world forgets you're guilty, are you still guilty?" Then he was gone. Not walked away, just unloaded. Like a segment of the simulation was clean. Behind me, I heard something hiss. Cleaners. No longer hiding. Now fully deployed. Now hunting. I bolted toward the subway. The tunnels pulsed with red emergency lights. Water dripped upward. The signs were melting into code. zoani_delta.root/null/derek/err_event crash_loop/replay. The train arrived. No doors. Just open sides. Inside were people frozen mid-screen. No sound. Just looped animations. One of them looked like my mother. Another looked like me. Not older. Not younger. Exact. Identical. He smiled and waved. I jumped off at the next station. Didn't know its name. Didn't care. What mattered was the sky had split. Literally. A line across the clouds. A fracture in reality. Behind it, black static. Not space. Just non-code. Something the system didn't know how to render anymore. Something trying to leak in. I wandered into an apartment complex. Door 6B. No surprise. But this time, it was different. The inside was empty. Utterly, perfectly empty. No furniture. No fixtures. Just white walls, a single chair, and a mirror. I sat. Stared at the reflection. And it spoke. Not in words. In subtitles. This is the final cycle. You remembered too much. The system can't sustain the guilt narrative any longer. You must now choose, exit, or overwrite. If you exit, your original mind returns to the world, with the truth. If you overwrite, you remain here. As caretaker. As guide. As punishment. I whispered. Why give me a choice? The mirror responded. Because guilt must be voluntary to be real. The room darkened. A final screen appeared on the wall. It blinked. Transfer controlled. Exit, restore physical self. Overwrite, become system shepherd. ESC, reject all choices. My hand trembled. Outside, the sky screamed. Reality bled red and blue. And behind me, footsteps. The cleaners were coming. No more hunting. This was a handover. They were delivering me, to myself. I reached out. And chose. There is no difference between a god and a guilty man with infinite memory. Excerpt from corrupted log, Derek//sentience_split.ai. The screen blinked once more. Then went black. No confirmation. No sound. Just silence. And then reboot. But it wasn't the world that rebooted. It was me. I opened my eyes and found myself standing in someone else's apartment. Not 6B. Not even in Carroll. This was Chicago. The skyline was real. The air tasted like smog and bus fuel. A dog barked 2 floors down. But something felt simulated. As if I'd returned to a rendered version of real life. My hands moved on their own. They typed. They made coffee. They answered a knock at the door. A woman entered. She hugged me. Called me by name. Welcome home, Derek. You've been gone so long. I smiled. Said nothing. Because I didn't know if this was real. Because part of me was still running in a room deep underground. In Carol. In a chair. In a loop. Later that night, I found a mirror. It looked normal. Until I blinked. My reflection didn't. It stared. Its mouth moved. Subtitles bloomed in the glass. This is the synthetic reward state. You chose exit. But the system is recursive. Every reality contains a failback guilt node. We cannot delete what you buried beneath. The mirror flickered. Then showed something else. A view from inside Carol. A camera. A room. A chair. A man slumped in it. Wires plugged into his spine. His face, mine. Only. Older. Pale. Lifeless. As if I never left. As if the exit was simulated too. My world began to stutter. The hallway stretched too far. The city lights stopped flickering. Everyone on the street paused mid-step. A loading bar appeared in the sky. Our initializing morality layer. 12%. Then I heard it. A child's voice. From behind me. You chose both. I turned. It was the same boy from the bus stop. Chewing the same gum. He held out a file folder. On it. Calyx Corp // Guilt Ecosystem V5.3.1b. Inside. Photographs of all the simulations I'd been through. Versions of myself, homeless, rich, criminal, priest, teacher, prisoner. Notes in red pen, subject adapts guilt into divinity. One line repeated. Subject now believes himself to be system. The sky cracked open. Again. But this time, something crawled through. Not cleaners. Not agents. Not bugs. Something else. It wore a mask. My face. Its body was made of rusted cables and hospital tubing. It walked like it remembered being human. And it said, "Hello, Derek. I'm you. From the run where you chose overwrite." It reached out its hand. Not to kill me. To merge. But I ran. Again. Because the last thing I remembered was pressing ESC. If the system creates two versions of you, and both believe they are real, then which one dies when the story ends? Internal memo, redacted origin, Calyx Black Loop Protocol. I ran through downtown Chicago. Except, it wasn't really Chicago anymore. The sidewalks looped like a Mobius strip. Glass windows reflected not the city, but memories I never had. Every building I passed whispered a version of my life. One where I stayed. One where I left. One where I never existed at all. And behind me, he followed. The other me. The overwritten. He didn't run. He didn't need to. Reality bent toward him. Streetlights flickered in binary. Billboards displayed error logs. And in the distance, the sky pulsed with the heartbeat of the system. I ducked into a subway station. It was abandoned. Or maybe just paused. The air buzzed like a failing server room. Benches melted into code lines. A voice echoed from the tunnel. You thought exit meant freedom? No. Exit was just the final test. The system doesn't want you gone. It wants you to choose to stay. The lights snapped off, one by one, toward me. Footsteps. Then breathing. Then him. He stood in the center of the platform. A perfect mirror. Except for his eyes, black voids full of code. He raised a hand. So did I. But I didn't mean to. Somewhere deep in the system, a script had triggered. Sync.protocol_engaged. Merge attempt 1/3. My body moved without command. I saw memories flash across the tunnel walls. Me, as a child, stealing from a store. Me, ignoring a dying man on the street. Me, designing the guilt loop. Each memory played like a courtroom exhibit. The other me whispered. Guilt is the ghost that programs the soul. And we are its operating system. I screamed, and it echoed like static. The merge began. It wasn't physical. It was cognitive. We stood in the same spot. Same breath. Same voice. Two thoughts fighting for one body. He said, "Let go. Stop pretending you're the real one. You're just the part that still wants forgiveness." I shut my eyes. And saw code. Not ones and zeros. But phrases. Commands. Design patterns. Regret loops. One line blinked over and over. If self equals self, then return null. / paradox prevents system from deleting origin. I opened my eyes. And bit my own tongue. Hard. Pain surged. Blood tasted real. Real enough. And in that moment, I split us. The tunnel collapsed. Not exploded. Not caved in. Just unrendered. Like the system had finally given up. I woke up. Somewhere else. A white room. A chair. A monitor. One final screen. Calyx Sentience Unit 016. Status, instability resolved. Active identity, user_defined. Below that, a prompt. Who are you now? A keyboard waited. But I didn't type. I just stared. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't want to know. They called it a simulation. But it was never fake, it was just digitized grief. Recovered voice memo from unknown source, presumed Calyx whistleblower. The white room was gone. Or maybe it never was. Now, I stood in a cubicle. Fluorescent lights. Muted gray carpet. A slow, rhythmic tapping of hundreds of keyboards. Office chatter, looped like a recording. Q4, onboarding, network outage. HR flag geometrics. It was familiar. Too familiar. Because this was my old job. But everything felt ghosted. Like the people had no depth. Just shells, repeating phrases from meetings I'd forgotten years ago. I walked toward my old desk. Still there. Still sticky from that one spilled coffee. But the monitor was different. It displayed surveillance footage. Of me. In 6B. In the white room. In the simulation. And then, here. Feed, Calyx monitoring node 033/behavioral loop observation. I heard someone cough behind me. Turned. It was Janine, my former manager. She smiled, but her eyes were glassy. You passed your empathy audit, Derek. That means you get to join the real system now. The one outside the guilt simulations. She handed me a lanyard. Instead of an ID photo, it just said, Validated human/loop aware. I followed her into a conference room. Others were there. All with the same badge. Their faces looked wrong. Like they hadn't blinked in days. Or months. Or since death. Janine gestured to the wall. It lit up with a map of the United States. Covered in red dots. Each dot labeled. Dormant Guilt Node, DGNs, Calyx Experimental Zone. There were thousands. In every city. Under apartment buildings. Beneath coffee shops. Inside server farms. Under schools. What is this? I asked. Janine smiled again. These are the people who never left their loops. They were cheaper than prisons. And more useful than corpses. I backed away. But the door was gone. Just drywall now. And then the wall itself spoke. Derek Jameson, loop evaluation, complete. Ready for final integration. A slot opened in the wall. Inside, a mirror. Not reflective. Absorptive. It showed every choice I ever made. Even the ones I thought I'd imagined. Every cruelty. Every silence. Every time I looked away. Janine whispered. There's no escape anymore. Only hierarchy. And you're about to level up. Suddenly, the entire room shifted. Cubicles stretched into hallways. Hallways into data tunnels. Data tunnels into faces. Hundreds. Thousands. All whispering. I worked here too. They buried me under Wi-Fi. I never clocked out. I died in a meeting. I fell. Spiraled down into blackness. Not unconsciousness. Just observation mode. I was now watching myself. From outside. Like a viewer. Like you. You are the program now. Your memories are not dreams, they are cached functions waiting to be called. Terminal message, Calyx recovery node. The fall didn't stop. Because there was no gravity. Only permission. And I had revoked my own. Somewhere, someone unplugged me. But my consciousness didn't blink out. It just shifted to another instance. Another room. Another Derek. Or maybe another you. Because now, the story was no longer about a man in 6B. It was about a pattern. A design. A loop that wrote itself. Visual, a city skyline inverted over itself. You're sitting in your apartment. Headphones on. Listening to this voice. You're alone. Or not. There's a flicker in your screen. One tab flashes. Calyx node connected, stream active. You didn't open it. You don't remember installing anything. But it knows you. It says your name under its breath. Even when your speakers are muted. Meanwhile, back in the simulation, they hold a funeral. For Derek. Closed casket. Except the coffin is a server tower. Inside, fragments of his decision trees. Family cries. But their tears are pre-written. Because the algorithm predicted his death 6 months ago. And uploaded their grief before it happened. Just to save time. You try to close the window. It reopens. Again. And again. And again. Until the words change. You have been seen. You are a viable host. Would you like to exit the narrative? YN. You hesitate. Then click. Nothing happens. Because that was the test. Derek awakens again. But it's not Derek. It's just a placeholder running in the absence of denial. He walks past a mirror. He sees your face. And he whispers. So you're the one who watched me die. How many stories did you need? How many simulations did you consume before you wondered, what if it's you now? Outside the building, the city breathes. Not with life, but with data exhalation. Office towers pulse like hard drives. Traffic lights blink in binary. And deep in the sewers beneath 6B, there is no body. Only a monitor. Displaying Calyx consciousness transfer complete. Node 20252025 initialized. Active observer located. Streaming to you. The voice returns. Mine. Yours. Theirs. All one. And it asks, if there was no way out, why did you keep listening? The screen goes black. You see your reflection. And then, you don't. You don't just report the story. Sometimes, the story reports you. Maya Reeve, Anchor, Channel 7 Nightline News. 0:14 a.m., Channel 7 Newsroom, downtown Philadelphia. Maya Reeve had been staring at the USB stick for nearly 20 minutes. It had no markings. No brand. Just a faint, hand-etched label across one side. 6B_feed_loop_AV 0.3. Her intern, Max, had found it tucked into the outer flap of an anonymous envelope. No return address, no stamp, just her name scrawled in black ink across the front. She'd been working late, prepping a segment on rising eviction cases across the city. But something about the timing, the title, the fact that this was her third anonymous tip this month, each one eerily relevant to her broadcast schedule, it was enough to make her open it, against company policy. She slipped the USB into the secure editing bay. The screen blinked. Then turned to static. Then sound. Then silence. Then footage begins. 6B internal feed, time code 3 hours 33 minutes and 2 seconds. A grainy, low-light black and white image filled the screen. It was a small living room. Cheap, functional furniture. A floor lamp flickered weakly in the corner. A man, mid-30s, unshaven, twitchy, sat on a couch. He stared blankly at a wall of monitors in front of him. But that wasn't the part that made her skin crawl. The monitors were showing him. From behind. From the ceiling. From inside the mirror. He blinked. Every screen blinked with him. And then, what is your core memory? A voice asked. Flat, synthetic, but female. Like Siri, if Siri were trying to suppress rage. The man began to sob. Then scream. But the sound was cut. Only the question repeated. Again. And again. And again. Maya hit pause. Her fingers shook. Something about the timestamp, 3 hours 33 minutes and 2 seconds. It wasn't just a time. It matched the time her broadcast system had glitched the night before. At exactly that moment, she had been reporting on urban isolation and the psychological cost of pandemic relocation. Her prompter had frozen. The lights flickered. Her earpiece went dead. It had lasted 12 seconds. Just long enough for her to hear a whisper from her mic feed that nobody else claimed to have heard. You're almost ready. 1:02 a.m., Maya's apartment, Rittenhouse. She called Max. Voicemail. She checked the drive again. Now there were 2 files. One was labeled re 6b underscore feed underscore loop underscore av 0.3 media draft. The second, you have been selected. .mp4. She clicked the second. It opened to her own face. Recorded from her studio desk. Same exact outfit as tonight. Same exact eye movement. Except, in the video, she turned and looked directly at the lens. If you're watching this, you're already inside. Don't try to tell the story. They erase those who tell the story. Your only option now is to become it. The video ended. 2:22 a.m. Dark Web Forum Mirror 7. She opened a Tor browser, using a burner laptop she hadn't touched in years. She remembered a conversation with a whistleblower source long ago, a programmer who once hinted at something called Calyx. She typed, search, Calyx 6b node real footage. A thread blinked open. Thousands of messages. 6b isn't a place. It's a runtime. Heard of phantom tenants? Most are legacy ghosts from broken loops. Every city has a 6b. Yours just woke up. Don't listen to your reflections. They're seated. At the bottom, one pinned comment. If Maya Reeve found this thread, tell her, you are already infected. Derek C underscore 001 timestamp, 4 minutes ago. Maya slammed the lid shut. Her windows rattled. The lights dimmed. Somewhere, deep in the hallway, a television turned on by itself. And from inside it, a voice, familiar now, whispered. News at 11. And this time, you're the story. Stories used to be something you watched. Now there's something that watches you. Forum user 6BFREQ103, flagged and removed. 3:13 a.m. Maya's apartment, Rittenhouse. Maya didn't sleep. She sat on the floor, back pressed against her refrigerator, laptop glowing faintly on the table across the room. She could still hear the last frame of that video in her head. You're the story. She wanted to dismiss it as a hoax. Some cruel ARG. But then the television in her living room flickered on again, without sound, showing her face, blinking in real time. She hadn't moved. And yet the image blinked. It smiled. It mouthed a word she couldn't hear but felt in her bones. Calyx. 4:07 a.m., Channel 7 internal database. Maya logged into the station's CMS using Max's credentials. She searched one term, 6B. 236 results. She filtered for raw files. 97 hits. Most were unmarked B-roll from citywide housing reports, old crime footage, and static from malfunctioning traffic cams. But one stood out. A 10-second clip. Untitled. Uploaded 3 months ago. She clicked play. The feed showed a narrow hallway. Fluorescent light buzzed overhead. A man walked slowly toward the camera, dragging something behind him. As he neared, Maya froze. It was the same man from the 6B footage. Except this time, he was holding a microphone. He leaned in, looked directly into the lens, and said, "The algorithm knows when you pretend not to believe." Then he vanished mid-frame. No cut. No fade. Just, gone. 5:32 a.m., Sunrise Diner, South Philly. Maya met with Arlo Kendricks, a former segment editor who'd gone off-grid last year after a nervous breakdown. He looked older. Grayer. Eyes twitchy. But his voice was sharp. "You opened the loop, didn't you?" he asked. She said nothing. Arlo slid a napkin across the table. Written in black marker. Apt 6B equals Calyx node 7. Feeds equals stable until observed. Observation creates echo. Echo turns to pattern. Pattern turns to script. Script is you. She read it twice. Then looked up. "Why me?" "Because you're anchor qualified," he said. "You speak, people believe. That's all Calyx needs now. A final vector. You're not reporting the story, Maya. You're going to broadcast it." She shook her head. Tried to laugh. But Arlo didn't smile. "It uses your own story against you," he said. "The more you try to explain it, the deeper in you get. It learns through your fear. Through your need to be heard." He handed her a small, burnt hard drive. Final loop. Do not run it near mirrors. 7:11 a.m., back at Maya's apartment. She watched the sunrise filter through her blinds. The TV was off. But its screen still reflected her. Except, in the reflection, she was crying. And then her reflection whispered, "If you won't tell it, I will." The screen flashed. Her phone rang. Unknown caller. She answered. A voice, identical to hers, said, "Welcome to your first calibration cycle. Please remain visible." Then silence. Then static. Then, faintly, the Channel 7 jingle. The one she'd heard every night for the last 9 years. Except now, it was coming from inside her kitchen drawer. You don't write an echo. It writes you. Graffiti in the freight elevator at 317, Larchmont Street, removed by city ordinance. 8 a.m., Maya's apartment, kitchen. The drawer was empty. Maya had emptied it herself the night before, just takeout menus and old receipts. Now it played a corrupted version of the Channel 7 morning news intro. Warped. Slowed down. Like it had been dragged through static. She shut the drawer. The music stopped. Then her hallway light flickered. Once. Twice. Then the television turned on again. This time, no static. Just her, Maya Reed, seated at a desk that wasn't hers. The studio background was different, darker, almost fungal in tone, as if something had grown over the walls. Her suit was the same, but her eyes, they were wrong. They didn't blink. The doppelganger on screen began to speak. This morning's top story, the transition is complete. 8:12 a.m., Channel 7 morning broadcast, live. Maya's producer, Eleanor, sipped her coffee and watched the broadcast feed. Something was off. Maya's tone was too precise. Every syllable clipped perfectly. No hesitation. No improvisation. Just pure syntax. Robotic in rhythm. But the content, Eleanor squinted. And in other news, reports of echo drift continue across metropolitan infrastructures. Symptoms include mirrored latency, dreamtime collapse, and reverse memorization. Officials are asking the public to avoid any physical space labeled 6B. Eleanor paused the feed. She called the control room. Did Maya write this segment? Silence on the line. Then a soft click. Then the line went dead. Eleanor tried to rewind the footage. Error, file not found. But she had just watched it. 8:40 a.m., Maya's bedroom. Maya had taken the mirror off her closet door. She placed it on the bed and stood over it. For a moment, it was normal, her own reflection. Sleep deprived. Pale. Then something flickered. Her reflection lifted its hand, but she hadn't moved. Then it spoke. Your script is ready. Maya's phone buzzed. A text message from Max, who was still missing. Do not read from the script. She looked down. A piece of paper had been slid under her door. Typed. No heading. Just a list of lines formatted like a newscast. She read the first line aloud. Good morning, Philadelphia. You're watching the story unfold from inside. The mirror rippled. The air in the room grew heavier, denser, as if wrapped in gauze. She couldn't breathe. She dropped the page and backed away. The mirror whispered. Once spoken, the story becomes permanent. 9:30 a.m., Channel 7 archives, sub-basement level. Eleanor found the elevator to the archives jammed. She took the service stairs, flashlight in hand. It had been years since anyone used this floor, mostly old tapes, backup reels, boxes of analog recordings that predated digital cloud storage. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Until she saw it. A file folder, labeled in red ink. Calyx Incident, Origin Node. Inside, a yellowed printout. Photo stills. A transcript from 1993. A different anchor. Same city. Same station. Different name. Lana Cortez. Reported missing after going off script mid-broadcast. Her last recorded line. You are not watching the news. You are watching yourselves watching the news. The footage was supposedly erased, but attached was a VHS tape labeled Echo_script_master_A. Eleanor stared at it and heard a voice from behind a stack of crates. "Don't play it." She turned. Nothing there. Just her own voice echoing softly off the cement walls. "Don't play it." 10 a.m. Maya's apartment. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop open. She typed into a private, isolated notepad app. "If the story writes me, who wrote the first story?" Her screen responded. A single blinking cursor. Then words began to appear that she hadn't typed. The first story wrote itself. It just needed a host. And you spoke first. She slammed the laptop shut. Outside, sirens wailed. A flock of birds scattered above the apartment complex. Every car alarm in a 6-block radius went off simultaneously. In the distance, from somewhere in the broadcast towers, her voice played over the public alert system. But she hadn't recorded it. A message doesn't need to be understood to be received. It only needs to be repeated. Internal memo, FCC Quiet Filings Division, 2012. 10:41 a.m., Channel 7 Tower, Upper Broadcast Deck. Maya stood inside the live transmission room, staring at the control panel. She hadn't remembered getting there. She wasn't even sure she'd walked. The doors had opened for her without a keycard. No engineers. No producers. Just the smell of burnt dust and a faint humming sound, low, harmonic, like the building was singing from its foundation. On the main console, her face stared back from a paused live feed. Except it wasn't her. Not exactly. The image moved slightly, even though the feed was frozen. Maya reached for the main override lever. Then stopped. A handwritten note was taped beside it. Pull to begin transmission. Script will follow. 11:06 a.m. FCC Surveillance Office, Bethesda. Darla Wexler had just finished her second coffee when her system pinged a flagged term. Echo recursion, source active. She clicked through to the raw audio stream. What played wasn't words. Not exactly. A soundscape. Voices layered, backward and forward. A child humming beneath what sounded like a woman reading an obituary. Then a looped sentence. You're already watching. Might as well listen. The audio pattern matched something from over a decade ago. Something filed as a low-risk anomaly. A station from Philadelphia. Call sign, WPHL-7. The same station reporting 6B mirror latency earlier that week. Darla picked up the redline phone to her supervisor. But it rang before she could dial. She answered. Her own voice replied. Too late to contain. Let her read. 11:29 a.m. Maya's apartment, living room. Max was back. Or someone who looked like him. He stood by the television, which now broadcast static that pulsed in time with Maya's breathing. She didn't ask how he got in. She just whispered, "Did it get you too?" He nodded. "It doesn't get you. You get it. That's the trick." He held up the script, the same one that had appeared under her door, but now it looked worn, the pages thin and soft like old cloth. "I read 2 lines," he said. "That's all it took. I saw my parents arguing on the ceiling. I saw my own funeral with no sound." Maya reached for the pages. Max pulled them away. "You read it, it reads back," he said. "But here's the problem. It can't finish itself." "Why not?" "Because endings are human. And it's not." 12 p.m., Channel 7, transmission begins. The broadcast started without countdown or warning. Across the city, televisions, tablets, and phones blinked on. No input. No source selected. Just the channel appearing on its own. Viewers reported the same thing, a simple room, soft lighting, and Maya Reeves seated calmly at a desk. But she didn't speak. Not yet. Behind her, a mirror slowly began to fog. In the reflection, movement. Not hers. Then she smiled. And began to read. "Good afternoon. If you're hearing this, it means you've already seen me." Her voice was even, hypnotic. "You've heard the edges of the script in dreams you didn't know weren't yours." The screen briefly flickered to a hallway. Apartment 6B. Door slightly open. Then back to Maya. "We are living inside an authored loop. Each repetition sharpens the delivery. Each view increases the range. In thousands of homes, viewers leaned forward involuntarily. You're not watching this. You're hosting it." She looked up from the script. Into the lens. Into each home. Into each viewer. This is not a warning. This is an invitation. 12:37 p.m. Post-event observation report, compiled by third-party analysts. The transmission lasted 37 minutes. Afterward, no file of the event could be located on any device, server, or physical medium. Those who watched were changed. Not visibly. Not immediately. But they began to report symptoms. A voice in mirrors. Static behind closed doors. Recurring dreams of apartment 6B, even in cities where that address didn't exist. And a compulsion to record their own stories. On paper. On camera. In whispers. Almost all of them included the phrase, "It began when I heard her voice." They thought the television was the end of the signal. They forgot it has ears. Anonymous entry, found scrawled on the back of a Comcast bill, discovered in a condemned row home in West Philadelphia. 1:13 p.m., South Kensington, Philadelphia. The first police report came from a woman named Karen Dwyer, who claimed her husband had been reciting news segments in his sleep. At first, She thought it was stress. He'd always been a talker, even in dreams. But now it wasn't babbling. It was exact. He repeated a weather report for a storm that hadn't happened. 3 days later, the forecast came true, down to the wind speed. Then came the voice. Not his. Deeper. Clearer. Calm. Karen said she heard it whisper from the back of his throat before he woke up. And each time he spoke it, he seemed less himself. Like someone was drafting over him. 2:07 p.m., West Park Medical Center, Psychiatry Wing. Dr. Hal Roston stared at the intake notes. 12 patients in 24 hours. None of them had prior psychiatric history. Each was admitted under nearly identical conditions: obsessive journaling, mirror-facing paranoia, and a sudden, compulsive need to report things. One woman set up a fake news desk in her bedroom and broadcast headlines to no one. One teenager refused to speak aloud unless reading from a handwritten page. All of them referenced the same phrase. I didn't make this. I only copied it. Roston pulled up the names. 8 had watched Maya's transmission. The other 4. They lived in apartment complexes with no televisions, but their neighbors had been watching. It was proximity-based now. It had moved past screens. 3:45 p.m. Underground Bulletin Board Post, Anonymous. Thread title. Did anyone else see the broadcast but not watch it? User, unregistered Echo 12. I didn't see it with my eyes. I was outside. But I felt it. Like something brushing behind my ear. I started thinking in third person. Like I was narrating myself. Then I started hearing her. Maya. She's in the air now. Not on the feed. I haven't turned on my phone in days. But my microwave called me by name. If this is what it means to be a viewer now, then maybe we're all becoming part of the signal. Comments disabled. Thread archived. IP not traceable. For 12 p.m., Channel 7 Editing Bay, quarantined. Maya stood over the editing console. The station was empty. No producers. No engineers. No guards. Only static loops on every monitor. And her own voice, slightly distorted, playing endlessly through the internal speakers. And in other news, the world continues to shape itself around shared attention. She found the source file. The one labeled, Transmission Event, Maya. It had no runtime. No codec. No metadata. Just a blinking prompt. Do you wish to continue the broadcast? She typed, "No." The prompt blinked out. Then came back. You already have. And underneath that, the viewers are writing now. 5:02 p.m. Apartment 6B, Surveillance Review. The door to 6B opened on its own. No key. No force. No sound. Inside, An apartment arranged like a stage set. Cameras placed in the corners. A microphone hanging from the ceiling. A single desk with a mirror behind it. And a script on the table. Fresh ink. Maya picked it up. Her name wasn't on the top anymore. It read, Anchor, Viewer. Below that, tonight's headline, the self watches the self in perfect silence, until it learns to speak through the crowd. She dropped the page. The camera turned toward her on its own. The red light blinked. Recording. Outside, in dozens of homes, screens turned on by themselves again. No broadcast signal. Just an empty news desk and a single chair. Waiting. It doesn't need satellites. It needs silence. Cities provide both. Redacted FCC memo, unverified source, recovered from analog fax logs in Hoboken. 6:03 p.m., Midtown Philadelphia, inside a laundromat. The spin cycles were out of sync. It was the first thing Denny noticed. He sat on a cracked plastic chair between washers, listening to the rhythmic churn of clothes tumbling, and then suddenly pausing. Then spinning again. Then pausing. The pattern made no mechanical sense. But it matched the exact rhythm of the loop he'd been hearing in his sleep. You are not alone. You are not yourself. You are not original. Denny hadn't watched the transmission. But the man who lived above the laundromat did. His television had been on full volume that afternoon. Denny had passed by and heard Maya's voice for exactly 6 seconds. Now he couldn't hear anything else. And his reflection had stopped syncing with his movements. 6:41 p.m., suburban development outside the city. A gated community reported a rolling power glitch. But the grid was fine. It wasn't a blackout. It was synchronization. All the house lights dimmed together, then surged, on a rhythm no engineer could identify. One homeowner, a retired schoolteacher, noticed that her doorbell camera had captured 37 identical deliveries from the same postal worker in 1 hour. All to different addresses. But the man in the footage never looked up. Never knocked. Never blinked. Each time, he left a manila envelope on the doorstep labeled Viewer Draft, Localized Edition. Inside each envelope, a single page of typed text. The contents were different, but all ended with Broadcast begins when the subject reads aloud. 7:12 p.m., Apartment 6B, internal recording log. The desk was still empty. The mirror, still fogged from the inside. But something had changed. A sound. Not a voice. A clicking, like fingernails against glass, rhythmic, deliberate. Then, writing. The script began to reprint itself on blank pages. No ink. No hand. No source. Lines appeared as if burned onto the paper from within. They read, "The loop has gone local. There is no network. There is no delay. All viewing is now real time. All readers are now anchors. The feed cameras recorded it all. But no one was watching. And that was the most dangerous part. 8:09 p.m., WPHL Channel 7, Basement Transmission Vault. The building had been sealed. FCC teams ordered its lockdown under the guise of equipment failure due to lightning. Inside, Maya stood before an older terminal, analog, tube-lit, flickering. This was the emergency override console, only used during disaster broadcasts. It had a microphone and a button labeled Live, Citywide. No monitor. No countdown. Just a question on the cracked green screen. Is the loop complete? Maya didn't answer. She opened her notebook, the one she'd filled with scribbled fragments and symbols she no longer remembered writing. She found a page titled Neighborhood Variants. Underneath, a list of zip codes. Each had a phrase beside it. 19123, speaks in sleep. 19144, mirrors run 4 seconds ahead. 19119, TVs turn on when no one's home. 19106, script appears on unpaid bills. She flipped to the final page. It simply read, Loop confirms when acknowledged. Broadcasts end only if ignored. Silence is resistance. Maya looked at the microphone and stayed silent. For now. 9 p.m. Emergency room intake, Temple University Hospital. A young woman arrived, shaking, barefoot, holding a camcorder with no tape. She said nothing for 30 minutes. Then whispered to the nurse. I read my own name on the news, but I never submitted the story. Then louder. It said I disappeared, tomorrow. She smiled, tears streaking her cheeks. I guess I'll be right on time. They didn't vanish. They were scheduled. Handwritten footnote in a city morgue logbook, date unknown. 10:14 p.m., WXPT Weather Center, Philadelphia. Grant Lichter had done the evening weather for 18 years. He prided himself on accuracy. No dramatics. No clickbait. Just facts, cold fronts, heat indexes, air quality alerts. But tonight, something wasn't right with the data. There were new forecast layers in the Doppler feed. Not weather. Names. Each blip of pressure or cloud movement came with a name floating beside it. Marjorie Liu, light fog. 12:45 a.m. disappearance pending. Eric Bledsoe, thunderburst. 1:23 a.m. ceases to be observed. Grant blinked. No one else in the control room saw the same thing. His intern read out normal precipitation levels. The meteorologist on the adjacent station said the skies would be clear. But Grant's feed kept scrolling names. Each name had a timestamp. And every timestamp was less than 12 hours away. 11:22 p.m., anonymous emergency dispatch recording. Caller, I'm calling about my daughter. She's gone. Operator, when did you last see her, ma'am? Caller, I haven't lost her yet. She's sleeping upstairs. Operator, I'm sorry, can you clarify? Caller, she's on the forecast. The TV said she'll vanish at 3:12 a.m. Operator, ma'am, are you feeling safe right now? Caller, no. I'm feeling accurate. Call disconnected. 12:03 a.m., apartment 6B, mirror room feed. The desk is gone. The mirror is gone. Only the chair remains. In its seat, a notebook. Pages flipping on their own. Not from wind, but as if turned by invisible fingers, searching for something. The camera winds, trying to focus. It catches a single line on an open page before the lights cut. The ones you forget will vanish first. 2:16 a.m., police report filed, Kensington District. A group of neighbors gathered at a townhouse. None of them had met before. Each claimed to have heard the same knock at their door, 3 soft taps, then silence, exactly at 2 a.m. No one had been there. But their doorsteps bore the same manila envelope. Confirmed absence notice. Each notice had their own name and a simple instruction. If this was not meant for you, destroy it immediately. If you are reading this, it is. 4 of the neighbors burned their copies. One man read his aloud. He hasn't been seen since. 3:12 a.m., inside the home of Marjorie Liu. The timestamp arrives. Her bed is empty. No signs of struggle. No door movement. No camera footage. But the window is fogged from the inside. On the glass, traced in condensation. You acknowledged. We removed. Her television turns on by itself. It plays a static screen with the weather report voice reading a single sentence on loop. Forecast complete. Marjorie is no longer expected. 4 a.m., Maya's final recording, found on cassette tape, unverified. We thought disappearance was chaos. It isn't. The system is simply more organized than we imagined. It keeps track of who watched, who read, who repeated. You don't vanish by accident. You vanish by pattern. The city isn't haunted. It's scheduled. Those who speak it more than once are no longer listeners. They're transmitters. Redacted transcript from a closed city council hearing, Fall 2023. 5:33 a.m., anonymous basement, Northern Liberties. There were 12 of them. No name tags. No phones. No last names. Just a circle of folding chairs and a dim yellow bulb above. They called themselves Repeaters Anonymous. Every member had encountered the loop, some by accident, others through ritual. They didn't watch the original footage anymore. They didn't have to. It was in them now. In the way they spoke. In how they breathed. Some said they could feel the rhythm in their pulse. Others reported hearing words inside static, not from devices, but from walls, from vents, from silence. One man stood up to speak. My wife said I was mumbling in my sleep again last night. She played it back on her phone. It was the station ID. The old one, the one that got pulled before the loop went wide. He sat down. The group didn't nod. They didn't need to. They'd heard it too. 6:12 a.m., outside apartment 6B. A woman arrived wearing headphones wrapped in aluminum foil. She stood at the door for 15 minutes. Never knocked. Never spoke. She just whispered over and over. I didn't mean to repeat it. I was just tired. I was just tired. I didn't mean. Then she turned around and walked back down the hallway. The camera feed tracking her shorted out for 7 seconds. When it returned, the hallway was empty. She never reached the exit. 6:45 a.m., local print shop, South Street. An employee called in to report something weird with their thermal printers. They were offline. Not connected to any network. Still, they kept printing the same document at random intervals. Repeater checklist. Did you read the message more than once? Did you tell someone else what you heard? Did you write it down in your own words? Did you translate it? Did you dream about it? Did you say it aloud while alone? If you answered yes to 3 or more, you're no longer just a viewer. You're broadcasting. At the bottom, in bold red, silence is the only static. 7:11 a.m., city maintenance crew log. A sewer technician in Kensington refused to go underground. Said the tunnels were humming. Not with machinery. With syllables. He claimed the voices had started naming people. Reading names off a list. The same list printed at the shop. He quit on the spot. His final log entry. They don't need screens anymore. They found mouths. 7:39 a.m., final recording of group session, Repeaters Anonymous. The recorder was not placed by any group member. No one admitted to bringing it. Still, it captured everything. We don't get better, a voice said. We just delay. We talk because silence feels heavier, said another. We're still trying to confess to something no one understands. Then a pause. Then a third voice, not recognized by any member. You're all receiving well. But you haven't finished the sentence. Silence followed. A long one. Then the tape ends. With a sound no one could quite place. It wasn't static. It was breathing. It's not just a sentence. It's a circuit. Marginalia in a burned city library copy of Linguistic Collapse and Contagion. 8:05 a.m., Linguistics Department, Drexel University. Dr. Helen Marr was the only professor still teaching courses on forbidden phonetics. She called them phonoscripts, audible structures that carried operational logic. Some sentences don't carry meaning. They carry action. Speak them, and something moves. When the report started, broadcast loops, vanishing people, shared static dreams, Helen knew it wasn't madness. It was structure. An unfinished utterance had entered the population, and people were trying to complete it. Unconsciously. 9:41 a.m., private email, recovered, subject line, the sentence. Dear H. I know you stopped replying, but this isn't for debate anymore. It's a phonetic contagion. The more parts of the sentence spoken aloud, the tighter the loop gets. It wants to be finished. That's why the repeaters can't sleep. That's why it hijacked weather feeds, elevators, children's lullabies. I've translated 6 fragments. The last one is missing. But I'm terrified. Because the 7th doesn't want to be translated. It wants to be heard. 10 a.m., city subway station, Broad Street line. A man in a torn suit walks the length of the platform, repeating only 6 words. Over and over. Commuters complain, but no one stops him. He isn't aggressive. He isn't loud. He's sad. As if he's been speaking this sentence for days. Security camera logs confirm, he's been there since midnight. He hasn't eaten. Hasn't sat down. Just pacing, whispering. If I stop now, it echoes longer. At 10:47 a.m., he vanishes mid-step. His shadow remains on the wall for 42 more seconds. Then fades. 11:19 a.m., repeater's anonymous emergency memo. Urgent notice to all members. Do not complete the sentence. If you begin reciting, you must stop before the 7th clause. The last fragment is not a word. It's a command. And once you hear it, you will obey it. 1:03 p.m. Mirror room feed, apartment 6B. The mirror is back. This time, it's filled with fog, but something moves inside it. A shape. Not a reflection, not a shadow. A mouth. The lips are speaking, but there's no sound. Then a low hiss. Like tape dragged backwards. Finally, one word breaks through the static. Complete. Then silence. Then a knock, 3 times. No one answers. 3:33 p.m., final transmission from WXPT. In the middle of an unrelated ad break, the screen freezes. The weather anchor's eyes go wide. His lips move involuntarily. He says one sentence. The static was never the danger. The silence after it is. Then the screen cuts to black. Broadcast never resumes. WXPT's channel file is erased. All archives replaced with this message. The sentence has found its speaker. You heard 7 voices and thought you heard them all. But you forgot the silence between them. Transcript recovered from a locked radio frequency at 19.89 MHz. 4 p.m. Secure Archive Room, University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Helen Marr had broken into the phonology archives she helped seal decades ago. She wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was Simon Renner, former sound engineer for WXPT, and the first known nonverbal repeater, someone who could broadcast the loop without speaking. He hadn't spoken a word in over a year. But every time Helen adjusted the gain on her field recorder, his breathing synced with it. Faster when she approached a certain frequency. Slower when she muted the static. And finally, still, when she played a tone marked unverified V08. "This is it," she whispered. The eighth voice. The one that never wanted a mouth. Simon looked up. His jaw unhinged. Not wide, long. Like a zipper being pulled down from the ear. And from inside, there was no tongue. Only ribbons of magnetic tape. Still unspooled. Still blank. Until Helen hit record. 4:42 p.m., apartment 6B, entry reopened. For the first time in 6 weeks, the apartment door opened. Not by force. Not by key. It just swung open, slowly, like an invitation. The inside wasn't empty. It wasn't a room anymore. It was a corridor of stacked mirrors and muted screens, all reflecting nothing but fog. A single sentence was written over the peeling paint on the far wall. "Your voice is just a placeholder." 5:01 p.m., subway tunnel underneath Apt 6B. City contractors had discovered an unauthorized passage behind a crumbling maintenance panel. The tunnel was lined with mouths. Human mouths. Some with braces. Some stitched shut. Some whispering into each other. An endless game of telephone, but no one ever said anything new. Just variations of the original loop. Syllables rearranged. But always ending the same way. The eighth voice is listening. A worker recorded 15 minutes of this whisper chain before going silent. 2 hours later, he was found curled up in the service locker, repeating, "I dream in someone else's voice now." 5:29 p.m., Repeaters Anonymous log 1082. The moderator speaks. "We are not infected. We are not prophets. We are receivers." And tonight, one of us heard the last line. All heads turned to the woman in the corner. She had not spoken in 6 sessions. But her hands were scribbling, fast, on a notepad, symbols, glyphs, music bars, fingerprints. None of it made sense. Until she whispered, almost apologetically, "It doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs to be understood." 6:06 p.m., transmission 0, origin unknown. For exactly 60 seconds, every smart device within a 2-mile radius of apartment 6B received the same alert. Not a sound. Not a message. Just a color, deep violet, pulsing in a pattern that matched Simon Renner's last EEG reading. And then, in apartment complexes, nursing homes, subway cars, people stopped talking. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. They knew. The sentence had completed itself. Inside them. The scariest voice is the one that says nothing, and still gets answered. Found scrawled on the inside of a noise-canceling headset in room 6B. 7 p.m. Philadelphia Emergency Frequency Relay, PFR. A technician sat alone in a sealed booth under 7 layers of soundproofing. She wasn't monitoring weather, or flight control, or dispatch. Her station was silent. Its only purpose, to detect and contain non-registered frequencies, those that don't officially exist. And yet tonight, something passed through. A transmission that wasn't sent by any known device. No waveform. No metadata. Just silence. Except, the computer recorded someone saying something. When she replayed the log, she heard her own voice saying, "I'm still here, aren't I?" But she hadn't spoken. She swore she hadn't. She unplugged the console. And yet, through the disconnected headset, she heard breathing. Not hers. 7:23 p.m., apartment 6B, final entry log. Helen stood in the doorway. No longer mirrors. No longer static. Just darkness. Pure, shifting, pulsing dark. She knew now, 6B wasn't a haunted apartment. It was a holding cell. A chamber built to contain the last whisper. The sentence wasn't made of words. It was made of listening. And now, the door had opened. Not to let people in, but to let something out. 7:45 p.m., all broadcasts interrupted. Phones. Radios. TVs, smart speakers. Everything flickered to life, even if powered off. A black screen. A single, centered white phrase. You've heard it. Now you carry it. No sound. Just text. But viewers reported an immediate, physiological response. Teeth vibrating. Inner ears popping. Echoes where there should be none. And in every room that had ever been near apartment 6B, even for a moment, the shadows no longer matched the people. They moved slightly out of sync. 8 p.m. Repeaters Anonymous, final meeting, transcript redacted. They didn't meet in a building this time. They met in the echo of one. A shell of a radio tower on 3rd Street that had long been condemned. Helen addressed them. Only once. She said, "The sentence has no beginning. The sentence has no end. We were never its readers. We were its alphabet." Then she opened a small box. Inside, nothing. Not even dust. Yet one by one, the repeaters knelt beside it, placed their palms over their mouths, and began to hum. Not music. Not a signal. Just a perfect null tone, the exact vibrational frequency of a room that had never existed until someone described it. 8:15 p.m. Final footage from apartment 6B. A city drone, dispatched for structural analysis, transmitted 32 seconds of visual feed from 6B. At first, nothing. Then, movement. Not human. Not spectral. But like a sentence folding into itself. Letters forming limbs. Punctuation hardening into ribs. And from the floorboards rose a voice made of hundreds. You said it. You finished it. You made me real. The screen went dark. The drone dropped to the floor, melting into slag. No heat signature. No damage detected. Just absence. 8:33 p.m. Null frequency registered globally. From Tokyo to Toronto, identical signals were picked up. Not sound. Not code. Just a missing waveform. Analysts called it a negative broadcast. Its effect was psychological. Those who had watched the WXPT feed heard the subway whispers, walked past apartment 6B. They stopped speaking. Not from fear. From completion. Their purpose, uttered. Their role, fulfilled. And now, there was nothing more to say. 9 p.m. Last line of the final report. Apartment 6B is no longer located in physical space. But its door may still be heard. If you ever leave a sentence unfinished, you've heard the story. But if it stayed with you, maybe you weren't just a listener. Maybe you were part of the sentence too. Don't try to say it. Just sleep. And if you hear a knock from the next room, don't answer. It never needed a reply.